Tensions are rising in the mass recall campaigns as Taiwan's main opposition party takes to the streets. New rules around the death penalty draw backlash from human rights groups.
I would say they have reached out a number of times.
Are Beijing and Washington getting any closer to making a deal on trade? Plus,
建一副中国旅行的风险越来越高。
Taiwan's government rolls out a registration plan for religious groups traveling to China amid safety concerns. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Liao. Tensions between Taiwan's two main political parties are heating up over investigations into misconduct in civic-led recall campaigns to oust legislators. A protest led by the Kuomintang against those investigations has now drawn scrutiny. Tiffany Wong's got more.
4 local leaders of the main opposition Kuomintang now wanted by prosecutors for alleged involvement in signature fraud. It's part of investigations into misconduct in mass recall campaigns in Taiwan. Campaigns sparked by bitter conflict and deadlock in the opposition-controlled legislature. Senior KMT officials, including the party's chair Eric Zhu, called for this protest against the forced potential detention outside the prosecutor's office Thursday night. They say these investigations are unreasonable. Taipei Mayor and KMT member Jiang Wan'an called out what he says is bias for the ruling Democratic Progressive Party within the prosecutor's office.
与其让执政的民进党用不公不义的手段来毁坏台湾，我认为立法院应该推动倒戈。如果赖清德总统因此解散国会，我们就用立法院改选。
On Friday morning, the premier responding to Jiang's calls to oust the cabinet.
发展到今天，人民是否同意是一个重要的议题。至于倒戈，就宪法上而言，行政院是被动的。
A vote of no confidence in the premier would require support from half of the legislature, where opposition parties hold a slight majority. But the legality of Thursday's protest is being called into question, with the Interior Minister calling for an investigation.
我们会把所有的这些跟集会游行法有关，包括是否在禁制区以内，或者是有任何其他的滋扰行为，全部移送由地检署来侦办。
As recall campaigns to oust both KMT and DPP legislators advance, analysts say this political storm has been a long time coming.
This confluence, which is a KMT return to power in the legislature, but does not hold the presidency, but also experienced then successive defeats in all these presidential election campaigns, that I think is what led to its attempts to expand legislative powers last year, then to freeze the Supreme Court, and then to then in fact cut the budget so drastically. And so now we're seeing this play out again electorally in terms of recalls.
The KMT is calling for another rally outside the presidential office on April 26th to call for a vote of no confidence in President Lai Ching-te. And as political parties get more involved in these civic-led recall campaigns, it's a time of reckoning for lawmakers and their parties. Justin Wu and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
New regulations on how the death penalty is carried out in Taiwan come into force on Friday. And they're drawing fierce criticism from rights groups that say they remove some legal protections for people on death row. Rick Liao reports.
A small but significant tweak by the Ministry of Justice that means whilst the extraordinary appeal process, that is effectively a last resort legal challenge to a death sentence, is ongoing, a prisoner can still be executed. Previously, whilst this appeals process was ongoing, an execution could not be carried out. Rights groups here, including the Taiwan Association of Human Rights, saying this is a backsliding in human rights and that the prisoners on death row are at risk and that there is a chance that executions will now be carried out faster and that the chance of miscarriages of justice will increase. The death penalty is a big issue here in Taiwan. It has widespread public support, but this change comes after the Constitutional Court was asked to rule on the death penalty last year, actually limiting crimes that can be punished by death. Since then, Taiwan has held just one execution, the first and only one under the current president, Liao. To find out more about capital punishment and Taiwan society, I spoke to Taipei-based lawyer Casey Yang, and I began by asking him whether executions might now rise because of this change.
It might be, but however, this new rule is not going to say the government should execute more people. This new rule is trying to loosen the rule for the government to execute. For example, in the past, this rule put on some limitation for the government cannot execute. However, in the new rule, it take away a little bit limitation. The original rule was that if there was some pending case, such as constitutional appeal or such as another kind of remedy, is taking place, that the death penalty cannot be carried out. However, this rule has been removed, so nowadays the government can carry out the execution, even if those cases still have some pending in the court.
Given that this change has seen opposition from human rights groups, legal professionals, why do you think the current Taiwan government would want to make this change to the death penalty?
In my opinion, they want to respond to the public opinion, because many Taiwanese people in the past criticized that the death penalty for being carried out too slowly. So I think this is a major issue for the government to do this. They want to take out some limitation, so they can easily to carry out the execution. The execution of the death penalty has always been highly political in Taiwan, because in Taiwan it is easily stir public emotion. So the politicians like to manipulate this issue in Taiwan, and sometimes the government may also choose to carry out execution when their approval rating are low to please the public. So this issue is always public. It's not merely a legal issue. It's always a political issue in Taiwan.
And why is there so much support for the death penalty in Taiwan?
In my opinion, I think that because Taiwanese people believe the concept of karma and the idea that those who kill others should themselves be killed. I think another reason might be that a sensational media coverage of serious crime, that media always highlight the cruelty of the crimes and the suffering of the victim. So it's very easily to stir public emotion and feel strong anger and a desire for revenge against the offender in the general public.
There are currently 36 prisoners on death row in Taiwan. Rights groups saying they now face an even more uncertain future. They're calling for this law to be suspended so that there can be greater transparency. Klein Wang, Patrick Chen and Rick Liao in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's military says 17 of its reserve brigades will receive a total of 850 surveillance drones this year. The military says the reservists have begun practicing with the equipment at its new drone training center in the southern city of Tainan. Taiwan's military has come under criticism for its slow adoption of advanced drone technology and a lack of resources. Taiwan's economic growth could drop to almost zero this year if U.S. tariffs cause a global recession. That's according to one of Taiwan's leading public think tanks, which says it's a worst-case scenario.
大概比较有可能是在乐观跟一般之间，真的发生这个比较悲观，我们觉得它的几率大概是差不多10到20%。
The new estimates from the Zhonghua Institution for Economic Research were published in light of proposed U.S. tariffs. From worst to best case, the three scenarios predict growth rates of 0.16%, 1.66%, and 2.85% respectively. Before Donald Trump unveiled his tariff plans, the group estimated up to 3.12% economic growth for Taiwan this year. President Lai Ching-te is doubling down on support for Taiwan's fishers ahead of key tariff talks with the U.S.
咱袂因为讲为了要去谈判，甲咱农业、渔业来牺牲掉的，袂有这个代志啦。所以咱来牺牲任何一个行业，迄就会影响社会一部分的人。这唔是政府要去进行的工作。
Lai made the comments at a meeting with aquaculture representatives in southern Taiwan. He's promising more than $3.5 billion for the industry as it braces for a potential 32% tariff on exports to the U.S. That levy has been paused for 90 days, and Taipei is moving to work out a deal with Washington. Taiwan sold more than $170 million worth of seafood to the U.S. last year. Donald Trump says the U.S. is in trade talks with China and that Beijing has reached out multiple times. That's despite China saying the potential for dialogue lies in Washington's hands. Rosie Greninger has more.
Weeks since the US imposed massive tariffs on imports from China, President Donald Trump has signalled the world's two biggest economies are in talks to end the tit-for-tat hikes.
I would say they have reached out a number of times.
She or they?
Well, the same. I view it very similar. It would be top levels of China. And if you knew him, you would know that if they reached out, he knew exactly. He knew everything about it. He runs it very tight, very strong, very smart. And yeah, we're talking to China.
The US president adding he would delay a deal on Chinese-owned social media company TikTok until the trade issues with China are worked out. Washington has imposed across-the-board tariffs of 145% on Beijing, with China striking back by raising its own levies on goods from America to 125%. China has not confirmed any talks, only saying they are willing to resume dialogue.
单边加征关税措施完全由美方发起，解铃还需系铃人。我们敦促美方立即停止极限施压，停止胁迫讹诈，在相互尊重的基础上，与中方通过平等对话解决分歧。
Both countries have also taken non-tariff punitive measures against each other. Beijing has imposed export controls on a range of rare earth minerals and magnets, crucial for the US in manufacturing high-tech products, while Washington is planning to impose fees on Chinese-owned or built ships that dock in the US. The escalating trade war has seen Chinese President Xi Jinping seek closer relations with Asian neighbours. The Chinese leader shored up relations with Vietnam, Malaysia and Cambodia this week during a three-nation trip.
习近平主席这次访问，对目前的形势相当有利，相当有必要。因为目前中国和美国打经济战嘛，对吧？我们要把东南亚国家就是发展和把东南亚国家的关系呢搞好。
Trump had a different reaction to Xi's tour, saying it was aiming to, quote, screw the United States. And despite the US president's confidence that a deal can be made with China, his tariff war could be opening up diplomatic options for Beijing, strengthening Xi's hand in any negotiations. Alex Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
As you just heard from Rosie Greninger, critical rare earth materials are becoming even harder to get for the U.S. China's new export rules now require a license to ship them out, but there's no license system in place yet. That means exports of critical materials are effectively frozen. To break down what this means for the U.S., Alec McDonald spoke to Gracelyn Bascarin from the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
To start off with, could you provide a quick introduction to these heavy rare earth materials?
Rare earth minerals are actually a group of 17 minerals, and they're a bit of a misnomer because they're not actually rare, they're everywhere. They're often found in small quantities and they can be difficult to extract. Now, the restrictions from China this week are actually on heavy rare earths, and there's a reason that we are particularly vulnerable for those. And that is that China holds almost pretty much 100% separation capacity of heavy rare earths. Because when I take rare earths out of the ground, before I can use them, they have to undergo separation and processing. The reality is that for light rare earths, there's some capacity outside of the US with some facilities, small facilities in Malaysia and Estonia. But with heavy rare earths, China was previously processing and separating about 99.5% of heavy rare earths, and there was a small facility in Vietnam. However, that's gone offline for tax reasons. So China now holds this dominance, not a comparative advantage, but an absolute advantage. And this is a really big problem for us because with these rare earth export restrictions means that we can't actually get access to them until China figures out a licensing system.
In the incidents of open conflict, it seems like the U.S. defense industry would not have a resilient supply chain to continue building more tanks, more fighters, more naval vessels as there is attrition in the battlefield. Do they have a backup plan to provide for this supply chain resiliency?
The U.S. defense industrial base is already on the back foot. CSIS put out a report, my colleague Seth Jones, who's the president of our Defense and Security Department last year, where he noted that China is acquiring and manufacturing weapons at a rate of 5 to 6 times what the U.S. is right now. China, he notes, is operating at a wartime posture and the U.S. at a peacetime posture. Now, the U.S. defense industrial base is not at a place where it has the surge capabilities to shore up these capabilities rapidly in the instance of active conflict. Now, you add in the fact that a lot of the strategic materials that I need for conflict, right? Rare earth, antimony, which was banned last year, tungsten, which was banned earlier this year, are things that China is actively stockpiling. And that prevents us from being able to get the materials we need to respond and shore up our capabilities.
So aside from the defense industry, what other industries are we looking at that could be impacted by these export curbs?
A whole range of civilian sectors are at risk. So automotive manufacturing. Automotive executives have already expressed their concern because we're building a relatively less profitable compared to China, electric vehicle sector. And we need rare earths for those permanent magnets in those motors, right? So easy example where supply chain disruption, when you have a limited supply of a material that is both needed for defense and civilian use, defense end uses will generally take priority, especially if there's potential conflict. Then we think about things like medical technology, semiconductors. Semiconductors are crucial for both their dual use, right, for military and civil use. Another example of where restrictions will be consequential. So we do see it to be in a range of strategic technology industries.
That was Gracelyn Bascarin, Director of the Critical Minerals Security Program at CSIS. Taiwan tech manufacturing giant Foxconn says their business will be affected by U.S. tariffs, but not as badly as other companies.
不会影响是不可能的，一定会影响。所以我们在4、5年前就开始布局区域化的制造能力，但是因为我们布局的早，所以相对比较轻。现在这个关税高低，没有人知道最终的结果是什么，那个是最大的问题，这不确定性。
Foxconn also said it would allocate more than $26 million for its electric vehicle subsidiary based in the U.S. state of Ohio. Foxconn is the world's largest contract manufacturer of electronics, making products like Apple's iPhone. Coming up after the break, classic Vespa scooters are getting an eco-friendly makeover in Jakarta.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, follow TaiwanPlus on social media.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. A new voluntary registration system has been set up for religious and civic groups traveling to China. The government says it will protect citizens from persecution, but not everyone is sure that it's needed. A hostile foreign force. That's how President Lai Ching-te described China in a speech on national security last month. In that same speech, Lai said he wanted to increase transparency for religious groups traveling to China for exchanges.
内政部也应建立宗教团体等公益组织赴中国交流之揭露制度，以防杜中国的干预与统战。
Many temples in Taiwan share close ties with counterparts in China, and they'll often travel for religious exchanges. But religion is tightly controlled by China's ruling Communist Party. With China intent on taking control of Taiwan, Lai's government says it's concerned about the safety of these types of exchanges.
鉴于赴中国旅行的风险越来越高，113年元旦期间，陆委会接获通报之国人赴中失联、遭留置、盘查或关押者合计71人，未通报之数字可能数倍于此。
Just over a month on from Lai's speech, the Interior Ministry now has a system in place. Religious and civic groups can register their travel plans to China on its website. Participation is voluntary for the public, and its creators say users only need to provide the bare minimum of information.
所以我们这个登录专区最主要的目的就是提供，不管是宗教、人民团体或者是公职人员，如果你有留下这些登录的资讯的话，我们就登录，然后必要性的给予揭露，并不涉及各自的部分。
Around 20 groups have already registered on the website since its launch, but the reception has been mixed.
一般的话都是我们会委托旅行社来办理嘛，旅行社办理的话，在过程来说，它就是会合乎政府的一个手续去承办嘛。我们是很单纯宗教的交流而已。
每个宫庙每个人的声音又不一样，每个人想法又不一样，到时候真的很乱让它很自然的交流，感觉这样是最好的啦。
Currently, only heads of local government have to register their China travel plans with the government. But the ministry says it's encouraging all elected officials to do so. With this new system, worshippers and civic groups can choose whether to let the government know about their movements in China. But whether it can help protect Taiwanese across the strait remains to be seen. Eason Sun and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus. Myanmar's military junta has released around 4,900 prisoners to mark the country's traditional New Year on Thursday, according to state broadcaster MRTV. Among the pardoned are 13 foreigners who will be deported and at least 22 political prisoners. Deposed civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi continues to be held in detention. Some other prisoners have received reduced sentences. However, this does not apply to those convicted of serious crimes such as murder and rape or charged under security laws. Mass amnesties are often granted in Myanmar for national holidays and Buddhist festivals. U.S. officials say a Chinese satellite imagery company has provided intelligence to Yemen's Houthi militants. The U.S. State Department said Changguang Satellite Technology, which has links to China's military, provided the Iran-backed Houthis with satellite imagery for attacks on U.S. warships and international commercial vessels in the Red Sea. The U.S. has since retaliated against the Houthis with multiple airstrikes to keep the critical shipping routes open. A U.S. official also said Beijing ignored Washington's concerns about the Chinese firm's actions during a private meeting. China has yet to respond. In Indonesia's capital, Jakarta, Vespa lovers are transforming the iconic Italian scooters into electric vehicles while keeping the love for tradition intact.
They may look vintage, but these Vespas are making history in a new way. In the heart of Indonesia's capital, Jakarta, a growing community is converting old gas-powered scooters into electric vehicles, keeping the style but ditching the smoke.
Itu punya desain yang cukup unik ya, dan saya ngelihatnya juga punya nilai historical gitu. Ya, ada nostalgianya. Jadi banyak hal yang sebenarnya bukan cuma berkendaranya ya, tapi secara fashionnya juga.
Hareth is head of a new garage in Jakarta called Elders. With respect and care for the classic machines, they handle the conversions. Out with the old, in with the new. Indonesia faces a rising pollution crisis, with cities like Jakarta blanketed in smog from millions of motorbikes. Elders now wants to be part of the solution.
Modifikasi Vespa di garage kita, dan pada waktu itu kita kepikiran kayaknya ke depannya Vespa elektrik nih bisa jadi something yang solusi buat negara-negara yang memang mewajibkan motornya dengan emisi rendah gitu kan.
For customers like Dimas Sidiatmo, it's not about letting go of tradition, it's about evolving with it.
Paling di perempatan kita sering ditanyanya, Mas, kok nggak ada suaranya ya gitu. Harus aku sekalian jelasin, ini udah dikonversi listrik. Oh bisa ya, iya di mana? Gini. Sedikit mengasih edukasi ke orang-orang lah bahwa ya bisa loh, kita tetap make barang kesayangan kita, Vespa kesayangan kita.
For Hareth and his crew, every quiet ride is a small victory. For design, for heritage, and for the environment. Kama Shu and Adil Brar for TaiwanPlus.
And thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we take you to Spain for this procession, part of the Holy Week leading up to Easter. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.